We're live.
And we are live. All right.
Awesome.
So for everyone who already joined, welcome. We're just going to start in a few minutes to let others trickle in and join us as well. So we'll start in a few minutes.
Yeah. And we'll banter until then. That's what we do. We banter.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, I remember the first day you came into Hacked, and I remember meeting you and what a bright, delightful ray of sunshine you were.
I was so excited to visit too and to meet you because I was just looking at all the amazing things that Hacked was doing. And I'm like, I need to get to New York and check this out. This looks so cool.
It was a fun run, and we'll be back. We're closed right now because of the COVID situation.
Yeah.
But I'm excited for our next location and next iteration because, biohacking is all about innovation and growing and increasing capacity for greatness. So I know the next round is exciting.
And you were looking to move to a new location anyhow, right?
Yeah, we were. Yeah. That first location was a minimal viable product. So I opened that on a shoestring budget, really having no idea what I was doing, like knowing that I didn't know, because really there hadn't been anything really done really like that. There were some trailblazers like Quantified Fitness in Tennessee. I don't know if you know Josh and those guys, similar but different. Anything that we ever do, there's always going to be our own personality and our own passion kind of behind it. So I learned by doing, and that location was, I hung the curtains myself and did everything myself, and I did a good job.
And it was a great location too.
It was a great location. It just wasn't, I was always a little embarrassed when people would come and visit because it was kind of like I would say it was like a college dorm or like a fraternity house, like where you're like, this isn't really the nicest of location, like the build out, right? I didn't really do any build out. I just did the bare minimum to get it open. I hung curtains instead of building walls.
So you had everything there, and the layout was great with all the machines and how everything was set up. And
in a perfect world,
comfortable feel too. Like when you walked in, like you felt like like you didn't feel like overwhelmed. Oh my gosh, this is like a intimidating place, right? Like it was
warm, welcoming. It was welcoming. Yeah, and it will still be. It just will be nicer, and there'll be more space. So like the workout part will be insulated from the recovery part in a way that we didn't have the luxury of doing in that space. So
I'm excited to see the new place.
I see it in my head.
You gotta envision it, right?
You have to be that. You have to feel it and smell it and then be the person for whom it is already so, right? Secrets to manifesting.
Right, so we can probably kick things off and then more people will trickle in.
Yeah, and this is recorded, so if someone joins later,
we'll have a replay available.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, okay, we have 14 people on the line. Well, anyone else who joins can come along for the ride as well. But to everyone who's already joined, welcome to another WealthCo webinar. My name is Oksana. I'm one of the co-founders of WealthCo, and we're so excited to have you join us. With WealthCo, if you're new to WealthCo, we are building the first evidence-based women's health community and bringing you the top female health experts with these webinars and interviews and live Q&As every weekend. So welcome. If this is your new one, welcome on board. Today, we're so excited to have fitness specialist Pamela Gold joining us to talk all about minimal effective dose approach to fitness and what it means for men versus women. And I mean, let's face it, I think, most of us are always feeling a little strapped for time. And even with the lockdown and maybe spending a little bit more time at home now than we're used to, there are always things that are competing for our attention. I know myself personally, so I would love to know what I can do to exercise smarter and spend less time, but still get those amazing results. So, I mean, really, it feels like that's something that everyone wants to know. So I'm super excited for the session today, and I'm excited for everyone on the line because we're going to learn some amazing stuff today. So a little bit about Pam, our guest speaker. I know that those who joined a little early heard us chat a little bit about Hacked Fitness. So, all around, aside from being an inspiring and amazing and passionate human being, Pam is the author of Find More Strength, 5 Pillars to Unlock Unlimited Power and Strength. And she's also the founder of Hacked Fitness, which is the first biohacking gym in New York. And it's all about, finding ways to exercise smarter and faster and get those results in a data-driven approach. And so when I got a chance to visit last year, I mean, I was just so amazed at the type of equipment that was there. Everything just seemed so advanced and so cool, and I wanted to try everything and learn about everything. And that's when I got a chance to meet Pam herself, and it's been just great to keep in touch ever since. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Pam to tell her story and her approach to fitness, and tell us all about the latest in fitness tech innovation. And for the listeners on the line, feel free to use the webinar chat feature to ask your questions. We'll also have a Q&A session at the end. So Pam, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Oksana. And thank you, Dasha, who's behind the scenes today. You guys are both just dear friends, and you're inspiring. I'm so excited for the work that you're doing. And I'm so behind this passion for, supporting women's health. So I'm just all on board and super, super excited and grateful. And so we're going to dive right in. So my story is this. I can tell my story in a variety of ways, but as you already mentioned, I started Hacked Fitness in 2018. Before that, I wrote a book, and kind of working backwards, kind of the most important recent part of my story is that I became a mom. And so I'm going to actually skip ahead 2 slides because we're just going to jump around. That's how we're going to go. Because I think it's really important whenever you, meet someone and maybe they're in really, really good shape, you don't really know, some people, it seems like their genes just make it easier for them to be in good shape. And you don't know if maybe there was a period in time when they weren't in such good shape, or was this just how they've always been? And it's really important for me to share that I was not always really fit. I grew up on a farm. And so I was really active as a kid, and I ate a lot of real healthy food, which is awesome. But I also then, was a product of a very typical 1980s, 1990s, society where I ate a lot of crap as well. And so I never really developed particularly good eating habits. And I kind of got away with that because I was super active. And then that kind of came to a screeching halt when I became a mom. So just to, we're going to talk a bit about hormones, and we're going to talk about, different phases of especially, in a woman's life. But really becoming a mom, and after I had my second child, is when it just seemed like there was this huge shift. And I mean, when you have a newborn and you have a toddler, my son in this picture was about maybe 4 months old, 5 months old. You just kind of lose yourself. And I was eating how I always ate, and I was breastfeeding, and I, without realizing it, regained back all of the weight I had gained during my pregnancy. So basically I gained like 35 pounds while I was pregnant. Then when I had the baby, I had like 10 more pounds to lose. And then in that kind of 5-month, 6-month period, I just gained back all of this weight, and I had no idea, which seems shocking, but I actually had no idea that I was this overweight. And so that's kind of an important place to start in my story. And I'll go back because that's what sparked me getting so passionate about fitness and wellness. And before that, when I was younger, I was a science nerd. I was in microbiology and biochem major at Yale, and super into figuring out everything that was happening on a cellular level and metabolically. And somehow, though, I never really applied it to me. And so even though I understood on a cellular level how the different enzymes and the biochemical processes were working, I had this, very kind of naive adolescent bravado around, this doesn't apply to me. And so I didn't ever connect the dots with nutrition. And it wasn't until I became a mom and needed to start paying attention that all of those dots connected. And that takes us back to this kind of view from here. So here I am now, but basically it all really started when I became a mom, and I wanted to get back in shape and I became a personal trainer, and I was working out 4 to 6 hours a day. And it's a lot easier to be in great shape when you're working out 4 to 6 hours a day. Then I went back to work running a company, and I was lucky if I had 20 minutes a day to work out. And that's what then catapulted me into this quest around biohacking and effective minimum dose training. And that's what led to Hacked. So I know I jumped around a lot, but that's the story. And so the view from here is what I want to share with you, everything that I've learned through my all over the place journey, from the science of it when I was really deep into the science, and then integrating that into a lifestyle, and then kind of coming back around, integrating it into a business and a program. It's all that learning that I want to talk about. And we're going to talk about the difference between fitness and health today, because I think a lot of people don't necessarily think about the difference. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a holistic understanding of health and fitness, because also lots of times when we just say fitness, we just think about physical fitness. And if we think about it intellectually, we realize that you can't disconnect physical fitness from mental fitness and emotional or energetic fitness. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about this effective minimum dose approach and what that means. And then we're going to talk about different opportunities we have to practice, optimize different tech, the latest and greatest. So that's the overview. I already talked about what it was like, becoming a mom and this low point that brought us here. And I want to talk about this concept of desperation versus inspiration, because I think it was Dan Brule I heard say this, that they say that these two things are both great catalysts for transformation. And it's important to keep that in mind, because we do want to continue to grow. We do want this transformation. And if we focus on inspiration, then we have this opportunity to avoid desperation. I found myself very much in a place of desperation and panic, to be honest, when I first realized that I had gained all of that weight. And then I knew enough to find great teachers and great people that really inspired me and really focused on that, because the key to transformation is this upward growth. And if we feel that desperation, we really get stuck in that place of despair, and we aren't able to then look and envision that transformation and really see where it is that we want to go and feel and taste and really experience that being of where it is we want to go. It's going to make this process of transformation harder. So that's always something I always want to talk about. Focus on inspiration. And then we're going to dive into this differentiation between health and fitness. And so health versus fitness, again, I already mentioned, it's a really important distinction, because health is being in this balanced state where we can fully function in a healthy way in the present moment, whatever our challenges are, however our body has to work, so we can go about our normal day-to-day activities and be in a place of homeostasis. So we're in a place that we are free from dis-ease or injury. So that's health. And it's really, really important that we keep that in mind, because it is very common for people to work on increasing their fitness. And while they do that, they inadvertently undermine their health, or they do it on purpose. They say, you know what, I'm gonna, make these compromises for a short-term goal. Like when I ran a marathon, and I'm not a distance runner. And so if you had asked me many years ago, Pam, will you ever run a marathon? I would be like, nope, that's not even on my list. Never going to do that, because I'm more of a just, sprinter, right? That's just how I am. And I decided, thanks to my friend Annika, that I was going to run the Paris Marathon. And so I did it. And I definitely had to make some sacrifices for short-term health. And I experienced a lot of dis-ease and pain in my legs and pain in my hip. And I got through the marathon, and I ran the marathon. But I really pay attention to this overall, holistic wellness. And that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today, is this holistic wellness and holistic fitness. Because at the end of the day, we may have short-term goals, and we can make these short-term investments where maybe we're undermining some of this holistic health and wellness, the principles that we need to rely on. But we know that that's not sustainable, right? And so I define fitness as this capacity for work and performance above whatever the normal day to day is. So health is that homeostasis in just the normal day to day. And then the fitness is this capacity for greatness, capacity to rise to the challenge, to say yes to those adventures, to handle whatever physical, mental, or emotional challenges are coming our way with more and more ease. So when I talk about work and handling challenges, I'm talking about physical, but I'm also talking about the mental, and I'm talking about the emotional. And that's why I say being of service, creating, leading, and inspiring. Because if we're going to inspire others, that inherently means that we're operating at this higher capacity for greatness. And that's fitness, right? And so it's exciting because that takes us into really starting to think about, why it is that we even care about any of this. Because we know that the body keeps score. We know that at the end of the day, if we make these compromises, even if short term we're able to rise to the challenge of whatever life is throwing, we're coping, right? We're able to cope. We've got great coping mechanisms and we can stay steady and strong as we handle these challenges. The body keeps score. And so we have to keep coming back to that foundation, which is our health, our physical health, our mental health, and what I call our spiritual health or our energetic health, because otherwise we're not going to have this sustained capacity for fitness or a sustained capacity for greatness. Cool? All right, so this takes me to my favorite question, which is why do we care? Why do we prioritize fitness in the first place, right? And the reason why this is one of my favorite questions is because there's layers to the truth, right? And so I'm a big meditator. I'm a big fan of sitting in stillness and letting the muddy waters kind of settle so we can see more clearly. And and trying to get to as deep of an answer to this question as possible. And ultimately, everyone has to answer this question for themselves. At the root, when you get to the deepest part of your why, is it love or is it fear that's driving you? And we got to be really honest because there's a lot of uncomfortable truths in this. But as we get to the root of it, we want to find something rooted in love. Because if we find a passion, a purpose rooted in love, that will help us stay in balance and stay steady. Because at the end of the day, if we're motivated by fear in anything, right, it's gonna propel us a little bit farther, out of kind of an ideal range, like overtraining. We've all been there. I'm a recovered overtrainer. Hi, I told you about the marathon. Now, if you ask me, Pam, why did you run that Paris marathon? At the time, I thought it was love. I'm like, oh, I'm going to run through Paris. This is going to be great. It was actually fear, to be completely honest, because I didn't want to let my friend down. And there was part of me that was afraid that maybe I couldn't do it. And so I was kind of trying to prove to myself, I was trying to prove to myself that I could do it. And I don't regret it, but I couldn't freaking walk for a week and I couldn't run for probably 3 months. To me now, from a more mature place of honesty and honesty and maturity, that's not how I want to make my choices. Okay. And so that's just a personal example. And, there's some discomfort in asking ourselves these tougher questions because we may discover some other things that are uncomfortable about, well, why is it that I'm afraid of letting my friend down? Or why am I afraid that maybe I'm not good enough or I couldn't do it? Or I'm not as good as those other people who are running marathons, right? All those uncomfortable questions, because there's other stuff underneath those answers that, you get deeper into it and it's, it takes some emotional and mental strength to go into that cave. And we're all about fitness. And again, the title of this presentation, I snuck it in small print, but it's Effective Minimum Dose Fitness for Life. Since we can't disconnect physical fitness, mental fitness, and energetic or emotional or spiritual fitness, we kind of gotta be ready to look at all of these because they're all connected. Cool? So here's the fun part. Whether we're talking about physical fitness, we're talking about mental fitness, we're talking about spiritual fitness, there's a process and we can love the process. And the more we understand the process, the more we can love the ups and the downs of the process and not judge the process and reject the process and attach to the process and whatever. We're going to flow with the process. Cool. So the first part of the process is the catabolic phase. That's where we do the work. The work part is the kind of like the suck. It's like, yeah, I'm going to be uncomfortable. And sometimes we love it. Like I love physical fitness. Put me in a gym. I'll lift weights all day long. I'm super intense. People used to ask me, excuse me, miss or ma'am. I used to hate when they called me ma'am in the gym. I'm not a ma'am. I'm a miss. Thank you. But they say, what are you training for? Because I would go hard. And I'm like, I'm just training for life. I don't have something that I'm training for. But I embraced the discomfort of physical work. Okay. Spoiler alert, other areas of my life, I had a lower tolerance for discomfort. Like in my personal relationships, I didn't like conflict. I wouldn't want to sit in an uncomfortable relationship kind of conversation. And I was like, ooh, interesting, right? Because it applies this catabolic phase where we're breaking things down and it's uncomfortable. That work, we're stressing our bodies, we're breaking down molecules for energy. Same thing for mental. We're stressing our mind, we're stressing our heart, our emotional capacity for love. We're breaking it down, right? And then the second phase is the part where we actually get stronger. That's the anabolic phase. Physically, that's what it's called. And it applies to all these other parts of our lives, right? But that's when we give our bodies the resources and the time and space it needs to repair and rebuild and come back stronger than ever. So this analogy, you see this everywhere in nature, everywhere. So you see it like when you go, and I'm older than maybe some of the people on this call, but at some point you're going to want to go to the dermatologist and talk about things you can do to make your skin glow, even when you're in your 40s and beyond, right? And one of the things that they do, they use lasers and they actually break down and hurt the skin, but that spurs the collagen response, right? And so then your skin repairs better than ever, stronger than ever, and you look younger than ever, which is awesome. Okay, so same thing in all these different areas of our life. You got to do the work, and then you got to honor the time and space and rest to recover. So again, going back to that other question, why do we work out? Why do we value fitness? If it's coming from a place of fear, not good enoughness, we're more likely to overtrain and not honor the flow of this cycle, the work part and the recovery part, the rest part. I am a recovered overtrainer. I used to think it was lazy to take days off and have recovery days. I used to not really believe in recovery days. I used to proudly share how I worked out pretty hard 7 days a week. I don't recommend that anymore. I could get away with that. Again, there's a lot of stuff we can get away with and not notice the dis-ease of when we're younger, right? Once we're in our 40s or even in your 30s, you'll notice a lot more people that are really intense competitors start getting injuries. A lot of my friends who got bit with the fitness bug the same time that I did, after we started having kids in our 30s, I watched my friends drop like flies, having with injuries. And knock on wood, I kind of intrinsically, instinctively, intuitively got also bit by the yoga bug. And so I put yoga in there, which is a great, lower intensity activity. It's more of a mind, body, mobility, lower intensity recovery day, right? And because we got to move, 7 days a week, we're moving. Every hour we're moving. It's just a question of what the balance is where we're really pounding our bodies and working hard. And then how much rest, how much recovery do we need? And the thing about that is that it's not always going to be the same, right? So the right balance last week isn't necessarily the right balance this week, which we're going to talk about a little bit more in a second. But this concept of highs and lows, where we want to flow with it, where we work and recover, and then work and recover, and we keep optimizing it. And that's the third piece of this that I got really passionate about once I got bit by the biohacking bug. So I was like, oh my goodness, there are all these tools that we can use to optimize, because we're getting data, and it's really exciting. And that old science nerd part of me got really kind of sucked in. It was very sexy and exciting that, like, oh, I could understand more, and there's more data, and ooh. And I admit I got a little obsessive compulsive in the beginning of this process. So I just want to raise the flag to that. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on too, but just, it's really, really important that at the end of it all, we're going for flow. I like to think about a slalom skier and using the data as the gates. You just keep it moving, keep it moving, keep it moving. There's no such thing as perfection in any of this. It's all about flow. And then it's about timing. And it's a dance. It's not always the same. Like, it's not always the same, right? And so we work hard when we're fully recovered. We rest when we're depleted, and timing is everything. And that takes us.
We're talking about this. Sorry to interrupt.
No, interrupt. I love it. I'm chatty. It's good.
Just the other day, I saw someone, and I feel like in the biohacking circles too, there are a lot of type A's and very competitive people, myself included.
I'm slightly recovered, but not really. And
yeah. You fall back to old habits sometimes. Old habits get hard.
It's helpful in some ways, just not.
Yeah.
You gotta find it. Yeah.
But I saw someone post about a challenge they were doing, like pretty long-term challenge of doing HIIT workouts twice a day. And the post was all about how, this person was in so much pain and like hurting, and everything was hurting, but they're pushing through it and like doing HIIT workouts twice a day. And I just kind of went like, is,
so
maybe
one of my
recovery time would be a good idea.
Yes, one of my core philosophies, like life philosophies, is like, thou shalt not judge, right? Like, because again, it's all about, there's a season for everything, right? I really deeply, holistically believe there's a season for everything. And so that person may authentically be going through a season where they're doing this, really are an intense season of really beating their body up. And then they may have an intense season of recovery that may or may not start with an injury. Like, I don't know. Like, again, I have such a deep reverence for life and for each of us living our own life and owning and taking full responsibility for our own choices. And one of my practices is whenever I see people doing things that maybe I've gone through before, and I know how it ended for me, and I care, so I don't want anyone else to get injured. I'm like, it's kind of hard. I bumped my lip. Like, I had like Barry's Boot Camp, a really big, hot workout in New York City. I don't know if you've heard of it or familiar with it. They've got like 50 people in the room at a time, and music's pumping, and it's dark, and there's only one trainer. And they've got half the people on treadmills where they're doing hill sprints, and then half the people on the floor where they basically give you zero guidance. They say, oh, go grab a set of weights, somewhere, if you're a girl, somewhere between like 8 and 20. And if you're a guy, somewhere between, 15 and 40. And then they like tell you to grab one set of weights and do like lateral raises, and then do bicep curls and then shoulder presses. And you would never, ever use the same weights for all of those exercises. And they're not telling the people anything correcting their form. And so you see these people doing all this stuff to try to use the same weight that they just did the bicep curls, and now they're doing the lat raises. And I'm like, and I'm a trainer. And so I'm like looking around, and I'm like, all right, everybody chose to come here. I am not the trainer. I chose to come here because it's actually kind of fun, and I know what I'm doing, and I am knowledgeable enough to not get injured and grab 3 sets of weights instead of 1. But my point is, it's like, there's not a fine line. I like to say there's a big middle path where we learn from everyone, we get inspired, and we don't judge, right? Because if we see some of these, leaders, because if you're an Instagram, celebrity, and you got your platform, or if Barry's Boot Camp, I mean, they're creating something that is leading a group. So, at the end of the day, I always find a middle path, and I figure out where I can do the most good. And I also know I don't know everything. And so I kind of just hold a big space for the choices that people make. And then I just get more and more comfortable shining my voice louder, right? And say, hey, if you want to do that, cool. Um, I'd be really interested in, are you doing a longer workout after it? I would just be curious, like, is part of your plan when you're doing this 30-day, every day, twice a day hit workout, are you going to do a bigger recovery after it? Not a loaded, like, snarky, I know better, but I'm just honestly curious. Like, maybe they are. Maybe they're doing a training research study where they're young and healthy and they want to see, like, if they work really hard for 30 days and then take 30 days and really, really recover. I'm curious. I don't know.
Yeah.
That may be
Experiment.
that may be a freaking awesome. That may actually lead to bigger gains. And if you're healthy enough and young enough and whatever, then maybe that's an awesome protocol. I'm curious, right? Like, one of my core philosophies is that curiosity and non-judgment and asking questions, right? And knowing that I don't know, right? And I sure as hell at 42 would not be doing that, because I also know, I mean, that's a lot of time investment. And started this whole conversation around effective minimum dose. I know that I can stay really, really strong, really, really stable, really, really powerful, really lean, really happy with how I look in the mirror, really happy how I feel, about how I look and how my body works, and, no pain, my flexibility and mobility. I would say, like, no more weakness, no more tension, that I'm like relaxed and loose and strong as hell, and I can do that in very little time. And we'll talk about that in a second, but to me, you could test things, and it all goes hand in hand with a lot of the things I want to talk about in this presentation, because at the end of the day, where I'm at and my lane and my kind of zone of genius and what I'm excited to share is what I've learned that works for me and works with a lot of other people. And I'm super excited when people test other stuff out too, that I can then learn from and then figure out, wait, now that thing that they just discovered, is that going to have a value proposition for me that works? And so some of these optimizations, some of these new evidence-based protocols, some new tech, some new things that we discover, they may work, but they actually may not have the value proposition for me, because the cost benefit analysis, it's not worth it, right? Like, the way that I'm fine tuning and what I decided my value hierarchy is. And each of us, again, we each have to decide what our value prioritization is, because someone may value strength and endurance more than I do. And I may say, you know what, I'm willing to compromise, that top 5% of strength and endurance to get back all this time. And someone else may say, no, I'm a professional athlete. I need to be at the absolute top of my game. And then an effective minimum dose workout for a professional athlete, that will be different than an effective minimum dose for life for a 42-year-old mom, business owner, entrepreneur, right? Like, we each have to figure that out for ourselves, right? And that's exciting and that's cool. And that leads us kind of into this conversation around optimization, because, like, one of the things that you and Dash and I talked about offline, and a lot of women are talking about, was like, okay, we're women, we have hormonal cycles, and how do we optimize our workouts in a way that's different than men? Because our bodies are different. Our hormones, our biochemistry, it's different. And it's exciting. It's exciting that we're different.
I just recently started learning about that, which is shocking to me, because like, just now I'm starting to learn about this, but it's just been blowing my mind, and I'm so excited to learn more. So I'm looking forward to what you're going to tell us.
Well, it's funny, because the first thing I want to say about this is, at the end of all of this, and I'm going to talk about this again later when we talk about tech, but at the end of all of this, I believe that our body and our mind, so our head, our heart, and our gut, are one. we experience them disintegratedly because we're all human and we've all had trauma. And there was that time that something happened and it felt like the right thing to do. And then it ended up being this really painful learning opportunity. And then we're like, oh no, I don't ever want to do that again, even though intellectually we know that it was a learning opportunity. But the problem is we get a little wonky and our head, our heart, and our gut get slightly disintegrated and we get a little spazzy and we're like, oh, can I really trust my heart? Can I really trust my gut? And I say all the time, can I really trust my mind? A lot of times we can't trust our mind. Between our heart, our gut, and our mind, I think our mind is the least trustworthy of the group, right? we get trained otherwise, but we want to use all three, right? And so at the end of this conversation, where my intention is to lead everyone, is to a place of integration and a place of being open and curious and a little bit more trusting of our intuitive knowing, right? So we want to use all the data, use all the research, use all the tech to start to say, oh, you know what? That's what I thought. I felt that. I felt that. And I did that kind of intuitively. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. Right. And so when talking about our cycles, what the research seems to show, and as we all talk about all the time, there is just a dearth of good research on women. There is. And this is one of the things that you guys are so passionate at wealth.co to championing is bringing together the researchers with, the us's, just the hi, here we are, clients, people out on the street, normal, I guess, patients or clients, customers, and then, doctors and entrepreneurs, right? And bringing us all together because we each are having a different, really important experience and piece of the puzzle that we want to integrate. Again, integration, one of my favorite words, right?
Yeah.
So there's shockingly little good research on this. What the research shows, and again, it's like, N of 20 studies and
study here and there.
Yeah. But what the research seems to show, which is completely backed up by my own anecdotal experience, is that, okay, so I don't know how much everybody knows about the cycle, but we're going to just quickly go through it, right? The day that we get our period is the first day of our cycle, okay? That technically begins the follicular phase. That's when the body is like, okay, I'm not pregnant, whether that's good or bad, I'm not pregnant. We're going to start now the process over. And that process starting over involves the release of estrogen. And so that begins the day we get our period. About 3 days later is when we really start to have a good amount of estrogen and reach this kind of peak. And what the research shows is that during the time when we have the most estrogen, which is that kind of mid part of the follicular, my mouth, phase, it's kind of a tongue twister. That's when we have the most estrogen. And there's been some solid research, again, N of 20, that shows, this one research study showed it was literally 45% more muscle was built when we were training hard during that part of our cycle, when there was the most amount of estrogen. There's not really clear research as to why. There's a lot of hypotheses as to why. And it goes hand in hand with how I intuitively, and my data shows I train. That usually there's 3 days, those first days when I get my period, there's definitely like a period of kind of, cleansing where there's a flow of loss. And that's oftentimes when I experience a lot of epiphanies where I tend to level up. We're almost like I'm releasing old trauma or releasing old ideas and I'm upgrading mental models. Like that's what I'm doing in those,
cool,
those beginning of my period phase, right? So that's when I'm doing a lot of meditation and I'm oftentimes experiencing a lot of big of ahas, like, ooh, I see how that old pattern was not serving me, or those old feelings that I believed were facts, that it's not a fact that I am not good enough in this way. I'm not gentle enough. I'm not caring enough. I'm not graceful enough, all those things, right? That's usually the first 3 days of my cycle when I'm bleeding, right? Is what it is. And it's like taboo. It feels like, oh, I'm ashamed. No, I'm bleeding during those days. And it's not gross. It's natural and beautiful. And I'm shedding something. And there's an opportunity to release and let go. Okay. Then right around the end of my period, I get this like, fuck yeah, game on, motherfucker. What am I going to build? Now that I just let go of that, what am I really feeling empowered and inspired to go, like, just take on and build? And I
New cycle.
new
The
cycle,
day,
and I
new month.
tend to hit new PRs. And I looked, like, I have all the data on the ARX. And so beginning of last week, I hit a new personal record, and it's smack, right in my follicular phase. Bear with me. And so it's spot on. Okay. So even though there's not a lot of research, I can tell you the data that I've seen, it's spot on. And then once we get to the mid part of our cycle, that's when the estrogen starts to drop off. The luteal phase is starting, and that's when it's harder for us to build muscle. You still want to be strength training during that part of our cycle. So the way that I train, it's once or twice a week is when I do my really heavy, intense workouts. And so that will be definitely 2 times a week during that first part, during the follicular phase. And then during that second part, leading up into when I menstruate again, that's when I'll have maybe once a week of that intense workout, and I'll do more mobility. I'll do more yoga. I'll do more, just going for walks and doing stretching and doing flexibility and mobility and balancing and those kinds of physical activities. And that's what the research seems to show. And so that's exciting, because it puts us back in control and lets us tune into our body in a way that flows with those cycles. And it is different than a man. A man doesn't have those hormonal shifts the way that we do as women. And so knowing that, and not sometimes maybe saying, gosh, I don't know why I only feel like training hard once this week. And last week I felt like training really hard, maybe 3 times a week, right? Like, just going with the flow of that, literally. That's a thing. And we're going to see more and more research that I think supports that as we get more funding and more people take on those projects.
Yeah, that was my big aha as well when I learned about that for women, you really should be adjusting your workout schedule and workout style to your flow. Because, I noticed with myself personally as well that, for these few weeks, I was so, into HIIT, and I could do more workouts in a week. And then in those latter few weeks or a couple of weeks, you really notice a slowdown, and I feel more like doing yoga or Pilates or just kind of low intensity workouts. And when I learned about all of these shifts and changes and how they affect how much you can be working out or should be working out and the intensity, I was like, whoa, that makes so much sense.
It's validating.
As much. Exactly.
It's validating. And all I'll say is that we're talking about really subtle shifts at the end of the day, right? Like I have a daughter who's 14 now, which blows my mind. But I really talk to her about anti-fragilization, right? There's a big, beautiful middle path where we're both honoring, the flow and being gentle, with ourselves, just like we're gentle, hopefully, with other people. We're gentle with ourselves. And then we're not fragilizing ourselves. We're not fragile. We're not fragile because we flow. It's just, there's a subtle differentiation. It's not extreme. It's not like, those days leading up to getting your period and those first 3 days when you have your period. I'm not a fan of a mentality, and I don't think it's natural or healthy. Like, if you are experiencing really intense PEMF, this is the biohacker brain.
Oh, yeah.
PMS. It's actually really funny. PMS symptoms. There's something going on. Like, it's not natural. Something is out of balance if we're experiencing really intense PMS symptoms. And so if you're feeling that, honor that, and then figure out, okay, what could be going on for there to be these bigger swings where it really does feel like, oh my gosh, I need to stay in bed for 3 days. Then it's like, all right, well, what are the other factors that are impacting my hormones? And that's, in a second, we're going to hop to the next slide, because before I get to this kind of holistic conversation, we're going to just go back to a second, for a second, talking about this effective minimum dose and the simplicity of it, because I know for a fact, another one of my kind of key philosophies for life is we want to just keep simplifying, because we all hopefully have these big, bold visions for greatness, like all the things in life that we love. And we all know at some point, I know I'm not alone in this kind of path of fitness and wellness, maven. I want to learn it all. You start learning all these really important practices. It's like, okay, you have to meditate 20 minutes 2 times a day. And okay, you got to do yoga for 90 minutes 3 times a week. Okay. And then you got to do HIIT for 45 minutes 3 times a week. Okay. Then you also have to, all right, do all this other self-care stuff. And then, okay, I'm supposed to read, a book a day. And you're like
an overwhelming.
Well, how the hell am I going to do all this? Right. And we've all had those moments where we're like, because you find a new teacher who you are super inspired by, and you're like, okay, I want to consume all of this teacher's stuff and I want to do their program. And then it's like, oh shit, I can't possibly fit all of this into, in my case, I'm a mom, I have a business. Even when I was younger, I was like, you had to kind of pick and choose. And then I think instinctively what most of us have done when we're further along on this journey is you kind of take the effective minimum dose naturally from each one of these teachers. And maybe you're consuming a lot of this latest thing to integrate and figure out for you, well, what's the effective minimum dose takeaway from this teacher, from this practice? Like, what is the effective minimum dose takeaway from that awesome yoga practice? Like, I used to love going to my 90-minute or 2-hour yoga classes. I miss them. I love them. And that's not part of my life right now, my lifestyle. Maybe that's like a treat. Like that's like Mother's Day when my kids are like, what do you want to do, Mom? And I'm like, well, I'll see you in 6 hours because I'm going to go to yoga and I'm going to get a massage and I'm going to meditate and I'm going to do my HIIT workout and I'm going to just lay and listen to music and I'm going to dance. I mean, in a perfect world, I would dance every day for an hour and a half, right? And you got to find what the right flow is. And so when we're talking about effective minimum dose workouts, there's a bullseye, right? Target for our stress, that's the work, the recovery, that's, the anabolic phase. And then we want to keep testing and assessing. There's no such thing as perfection in this process. You just keep kind of going with it. Like, okay, how close was I to the bullseye? How close was I? How close was I? And you just keep flowing. You just keep flowing. And then you keep getting smarter. Okay. So, and we want to get smarter and simpler because life naturally is complex and things are going to get more and more complex without us doing anything. Just wait. If you're going to become a mom, you call me when you become a mom and I'll say, oh yeah, I know that feeling. It's hi, welcome to the club. Cause it's like, oh my freaking goodness gracious. So if you're not yet a mom, start practicing this now so you really are dialed in. And if you want to do extra, great. People come to Hacked all the time and they're like, but Pam, I love to do a 2-hour run. I'm like, that's awesome. If that fits into your lifestyle, do it. Oh my goodness. Whatever sparks joy, do it. And just know that you don't have to reach your goals, right? And sometimes you may find actually that 2-hour run is not actually a good fit because your recovery isn't where you think it is. So start tracking your recovery. And I'm a big fan of the Aura Ring. We'll talk about, the tools that I use in a second. But
someone asked what data is informative and talk all
versus
about that.
Too much, right? Because this smarter workout, fine-tuned for adaptive response. Everybody's different. Every day is different. Every week is different. Target recovery, so smarter recovery to optimize this rebuilding process. Everybody is different. Every day is different. And then how are we testing and assessing? That's the simplicity of this. And the cool thing is, as we execute and we're using the data, the results, as strategically as possible to gauge results, it really is all about results. And this is my favorite slide, Oksana, I have to tell you. First of all, you are the star. Okay. Like you are the star of your story, your life. This is all about you. This is not about my star. This is not about person over there's star. And we're human, and so we compare, and okay, we do that and
We like to
giggle and
compare.
say,
Yeah.
yeah. And when you catch yourself comparing yourself to someone else, smile, soften, don't make a problem of it. This is Mark Atkinson talking. You smile, you soften, you don't make a problem of it. You giggle and you say, oh, silly Pam. That's what I say to myself, silly Pam. I don't do it anymore because I lovingly retrained my brain to not do it. There's some of it still, this inner critic in my energy field. So I feel it energetically. But the point of this is that you are the star. And wherever you are already a star. And so much of the fitness industry is telling us that we're not good enough, and is telling us subconsciously to compare ourselves to other people, which totally undermines our fitness, right? Because you cannot disconnect any of these 5 points on the brightness of our star, because it's fitness for life, right? So, our physical fitness, our mental fitness, our nutritional fitness, our sleep fitness, and our communal fitness. These are the 5 points on the star. And this is all really important to talk about in the context of this optimization and this research driven, evidence based, going deeper and deeper into all of this potential to use new tools and new methodologies. Because at the end of the day, if you get too sucked into the physical fitness point of the star, you're going to be out of balance, and your star is going to be kind of funny looking, right? Like if you get too heavy and too sucked into the physical fitness part, you're going to be a funny looking star. And it's just funny. We're not going to make a problem of it. We're just going to smile, soften. Because I used to be a funny looking star. My story, my authentic story is that after I became a mom, especially the second time around, I completely lost myself. So my nutritional fitness sucked. My sleep fitness, that really sucked. My communal fitness sucked. My mental fitness kind of sucked, and my physical fitness sucked. Okay. I didn't know any of this at the time, how to organize it and how to structure it and how to have a holistic plan. I just was like, all right, what can I do? And honestly, thinking about the mental fitness and the communal fitness, I couldn't do anything really about the sleep fitness. Hi, new baby.
Yeah.
But the physical and the nutritional fitness, at first, it was just the physical. So my story was, at first, I was like, oh my God, I have to lose 50 pounds, because that's how overweight I was. And I'm a really tiny person. So 50 pounds on me, it's a lot. Okay. So I just went super heavy on the physical fitness. I started going to the gym 7 days a week. But then I didn't change my nutrition, and I started bruising. I started having really wonky, kind of scary results. And it was like an aha, something is off. So then I started studying nutrition for the first time, and it connected to the dots of all the biochemical knowledge I had, right? And I got really, really shored up in my nutrition. So my physical fitness really good. My nutritional fitness was really good. My body looked really good, but I still didn't feel good. My husband would, lovingly, or maybe not so lovingly, give me some feedback on something, and I would snap and I wouldn't be patient. Or my kids would, come and ask me something, or maybe yell or something, and I would snap, and it didn't feel so good. And there were things like I wasn't feeling really fit. I didn't feel like I was really fit for life. I could go to the gym and like knock it out of the park, but there were these other mental and emotional areas of fitness that weren't doing so good. And so that's why I realized this holistic star, and I started practicing it. And that's really what led me to meditation and led me into kind of this holistic biohacking mindset that I have now, which is the perfect segue to talk about this innovation and the optimization. And notice that there's a big asterisk, and it says, if holistically sound. Because what can happen is, as humans, we're always in danger of becoming kind of obsessive compulsive about
Mhm.
stuff. And when I say results speak for themselves, that's when, if we're really honest about this holistic area of fitness, if we're in balance, our mind, body, and spirit fitness will feel good. If we're out of balance, something won't feel right. We'll feel it. We'll know something is off. And then we got to look. It's like, am I getting sucked into the data? I had plenty of clients at Hacked who, using the Aura Ring in the beginning, didn't work for them because the data would kind of like make them a little crazy. And they'd start to obsess over every single day's numbers. And I was like, I don't think this is actually a good starting point for you. I think we need to actually kind of soften and not look at the data right now. Because from a mental health perspective, getting too sucked into the data, that's like you're going to like being a slalom skier and getting to the gate and like staying with the gate and like stop skiing and like you're holding onto the gate and looking at the gate and every gate you get to. And I'm like, no, we're not flowing. And so we have to really be honest about our own personal path, our own personal optimization process, and find what feels like flow. And it may be some of the people on this call may have been really, really psyched to learn a lot about physical fitness methodologies, when actually that's the last thing that if I were your coach, I'd be telling you right now to focus on. And how can we gently start to look at mental fitness and gently start to look at communal fitness? Because communal fitness includes your relationship with yourself. And I don't know a human being alive that doesn't have some seriously beautiful opportunities to level up in their fitness in terms of their relationship with their self, right? And that will have one-to-one impact on the leveling up that you're going to have on your physical fitness in the gym. I swear to God, more than maybe, reading the latest research study and like digging deep into the, the N20, okay, this and why. It's like, just, you're fine on the physical fitness side. Let's do some self-love. Let's get out in nature and commune with nature. And let's look at your cognitive functioning and mental models and what you're believing is true and how you're feeling, your emotional kind of reactions versus responses and your choices. It's because it's all one. And so, with that, we can talk a bit about some of the latest innovations, because I know it's exciting and that's fun. And I put them in 4 different buckets: this assessments and biodata. So understanding both our unique biology and our day-to-day results, that continues to improve, which then continues the level of precision that we have to find this balance between the work and the recover kind of phases. We have these awesome high-tech workout tools, which I love, these computerized and artificially intelligent tools. And we're just at the beginning of this. And it really takes a lot of, the struggle and the challenge out of it, like the Carol bike, which we'll talk about. Awesome tool. High-tech recovery tools. So that's like PEMF, not to be confused with PMS.
There's that acronym again.
Not to be but there's a lot of latest, and some of the stuff, it's kind of old science that just, there hasn't been a lot of research on it. And a lot of the stuff, once we get into the quantum level, I'm a science nerd and I went pretty deep studying quantum physics. Once we get into studying quantum physics, we realize that there's a lot of subtle stuff going on that makes it harder to study and have evidence-based studies around some of these tools. And it's one of the things I'm going to talk about in a minute. And we're going to talk about some of the innovations around enhancements. So, there's a lot of, brain performance stimulation, there's biofeedback, there's a lot of different enhancements. And we could even put, things like blood flow restriction. We could talk about that as an enhancement, that, there are these training protocols that aren't maybe as well studied, newer, and are these things that are actually the right things to be using to help us level up or not. And it's just all about your unique value proposition. So we can go a little deeper on this stuff, the Oura Ring, the BioStrap, the Whoop, these wearable trackers. Mine's charging right now, so I don't have my Oura on. The Oura Ring is again, it's all about ease of use to me, because if something is hard to use or a pain in the ass, then the value that I'm getting from it is not enough to overcome the pain in the assness of it. So it's all about the value proposition, and everybody's value proposition is different. So you have to figure out where your value hierarchy is and what you're going to invest into. It's all about return on investment, right? So the sleep trackers, I would say everyone, I would set the intention to use a sleep tracker at least for 2 weeks, because if you are not aware of your sleep hygiene, there's a huge amount of low-hanging fruit there. Just to be able to see in black and white, oh my gosh, when I eat within 2 hours of bedtime, my sleep sucks. If I have one drink 2 drinks, 3 drinks. Oh my God, my sleep sucks. Just to see it. We want real information. We do not want to put our head in the sand. We want real information. So these trackers can be really, really valuable for that. These performance assessments. So as we're working out, I'm all about using smart data-driven workout tech because they're giving us real-time assessments, real-time feedback. I mean, that is just invaluable. So we can actually track our results. And that's the easiest way. And some of these trackers like the Panoe, I've been really disappointed in. It's so hard to use. It's really inconsistent. I haven't gotten any value out of it, unfortunately. And so it's an example of one that maybe if you're a professional athlete, you're going to get enough value out of it to make the investment worth it. But for me and what I've done with my personal fitness and hacked is it's not something that I'm using. And then of course the body assessments to track our physical changes. And so this could also include even like the hormonal tests, tracking whether we have a plan, we execute that plan, that program, do we get improved results in our actual biometrics in our body. So those are the assessments. And then, of course, the high-tech workouts. You've been to Hacked, so you know that I'm a huge fan of the ARX. I'm also a huge fan of the eGym. I'm obsessed with the Proteus. That is a kind of a functional workout machine that's data-driven, super cool. D-Wall is the picture there. And then eStim, eStim is technically high-tech because you're getting shocked while you work out. I'm a little shy around it because you're not actually able to track results in real time. And because you're stimulating your body the same time that you're working out, how do you really figure out the precise amount of stimulation plus work? And you can only really after the fact assess the recovery. And I've had a couple eStim workouts where it definitely was too much. And like I remember one time I couldn't lift my arms up for 8 days. If you can't lift your arms up for 8 days, it was too much, right? Because then you're like something could fall on you and you go to like protect yourself and you injure yourself. So I'm all about practicality. Like we gotta live our life. So if you did something and you're so sore that like when I ran the marathon, I literally couldn't walk for at least a week. Going downstairs was excruciating. That was too much and that's not sustainable. So, this is all about results, all about holistic results. And then the Carol I love, that uses AI to give us the precise resistance in a 20-second sprint twice to under 9 minutes, you get the equivalent from a glycogen depletion perspective of a 45-minute jog. So I'm a huge fan of the Carol because it's lowering the resistance that people may have to working out. Like my husband, he's not really into fitness. He does the Carol. For him, that tool is gold. For some people, it's like, I can do a 45-minute Peloton class, and I enjoy it. And is that really the cost benefit, the value prop? Everybody's got to find their own value propositions. It's all about empowering ourselves to kind of rise up, right? And
different tools will work for different people.
Yeah, at different times
as well. You got to find a tracker that you're going to wear and use consistently. For me, Oura Ring was easy, simple. It looks like a piece of jewelry. It's not uncomfortable to sleep with, like a wrist tracker.
Yep.
I just couldn't get into them. It's not something that I could wear.
Yeah, I would take it off to charge it and forget to put it back on.
Exactly.
That's one of my MOs. That's why because I took it on the charger and then I forget to put it back on. We all have our unique life challenges, let that be the worst thing that happened to me today. But yeah, you have to just find what works for you. And that's the thing. We have to be honest. We can't be like, oh, I want to be like Pam and I want to do all the things that Pam does. Okay, but if it doesn't work for you, that's not the right program for you. And so
you're going to be forcing it and it's not.
Yeah. And tweaking it. And and so it's all about results and it's about flow, right? And so this is on the recovery side. I just listed some of the tools that either I use regularly or I'm passionate about, I believe in. On the mental side, things like New Calm, Brain Tap. I use sound and light. And that's the thing when we talk about this leading edge, the latest and best that we know that sound, vibration, light, music, spoken word, we know that this impacts our brain. We know that it can stimulate parasympathetic recovery responses. And so, again, like some people love the brain tap. The brain tap has a flashing light. Some people do not like the brain tap. They just like the sound of the binaural beats or a spoken word. And so finding what feels right for you on the recovery side is the key. And I have a great new breath coach, and her whole methodology is around finding ease, focus on the ease. And that unlocks tremendous growth, tremendous release and growth. And so, sound and light, we know it's a thing, play with it, try. I always say with everybody, everything at Hacked, try it for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Try it for yourself. See what results you get, report back, because none of this stuff is just set in stone. Like that's one of the things that's kind of frustrating for a scientist. I want to see the precise prescription. Do this exact amount before you do that, and then that exact. None of this is like that. This is really about empowering each individual to own their own wellness, own their own fitness, and then be their own scientist. And just keep trying, keep flowing and trying. That was a little bit, but not perfect. A little bit, but not perfect. And you just keep the progress of it. This is progress. So photobiomodulation, that's the red light therapy. It refers to all the spectrum of light, just that we know light therapy has an impact on our cellular health. Oxygen and hydrogen, we know that both of these modalities. It's funny. I made this slide originally a long time ago before I understood as much as I understand now about like the LiveO2. This was originally, I made this slide before the Nobel Prize was delivered around the science of the oxygen uptake and what an important process in our body and how linked to overall kind of wellness and health and capacity, fitness capacity. But that's something I'm not an expert in that at all. And as I age, that's one of the first things that when I start to feel like I'm declining in any way, I'm going to do more and more of that oxygen training.
Oxygen training, yeah.
The LiveO2 and the hyperbaric. I mean, to me, I lean more on the side of doing the oxygen workout training, because when you're stressing your system versus lying still, it seems like the evidence is that that has more advantages than the hyperbolic. But there are some situations when the hyperbolic will be a better option than the LiveO2, oxygen training. Compression therapy, so that's all about lymph system drainage, which again, you could go really, really deep on the science behind lymph drainage. And I'm certainly not an expert in that. I just lost you, Oksana, but hopefully you'll come back. Hopefully that's not a sign of something bad. But that's the compression. It's about the lymph drainage. And there's tons of evidence about, the integral nature of the lymph system. PEMF, I'm obsessed with PEMF, hence the slip. I have the Pulse Center PEMF at home. I also use Bob Dennis's ICES micropulse machine. Bob Dennis is the original NASA scientist who did all of the development of the PEMF technology for NASA. And I was super excited that I got to, spend time with him, and he's a friend and can chat with him. And the first time I talked to him, I was so excited because I thought he was going to get to explain to me, because I'm a scientist, I want to understand, how does PEMF work? How does it stimulate growth? What's going on in there? And it was hysterical. I'll never forget the moment. He's like, "Oh, I don't know. I just know it works." Because he studied it, in petri dishes and studied the impact that PEMF had on cellular growth. And he has all these theories. And at the end of the day, he can't explain. And so much of this, when you really go deep on any of the evidence-based stuff, you get to a point where the answer is, we don't know. So that's why ultimately for us to embrace at least some level of not knowing and be willing to try things for ourselves and then be our own scientists, see what works. And PEMF, I can tell you without a doubt, works for me. And I know so many people. I broke my rib and I was in excruciating pain. I started using it. I went from like a 10 in pain to a 7 to a 4 in one day. By day 2, I was at a 2. And that first day, there was no planking. There was no Pam holding a plank. And this was November of last year. There was no planking. It was horrific. And then day 2, certainly no planking, but I was like, huh, okay. By the end of the week, I was not only planking, I was back on the ARX, and it would still hurt. Like I would get in bed, I'd be like, ooh, certain things, but I recovered in a way that was outside of any norm. Like there was no norm that was. And again, I was all quantified. I could see my numbers on the ARX, so I could see my recovery quantified, right?
I've
Sound of
heard
my
amazing things about PEMF, so
Oh my
that's,
gosh, I
I
highly
haven't tried it personally,
recommend.
but it's been on my list.
Well,
I just keep
the
hearing amazing
the
things
the
about it.
Bob Dennis unit is not that expensive. So heaven forbid you have an acute injury you need to heal from, just let me know. I can send you one. You can borrow it. We are going to be kind of renting them and selling them through the Hacked portal. But I highly recommend, especially for acute injuries. But even like a cat, we were talking about cats before, cats with renal failure. So usually when a cat gets diagnosed with renal failure, it's unfortunately there's nothing you can do. Cats that use Bob Dennis's PEMF device, he did a whole study. I think it was like 8 cats or 12 cats or something. Every single one of them recovered. So people love their cats and they get diagnosed with renal failure. Get this device. It's like $400 or three. Like there's 2 different levels, but that it works, and we can't explain why. And we can't make any claims that it cure. When I say it works, it seems to work. It's worked for other people because we can't make any claims that it treats, cures, prevents, or diagnoses illness. And it has worked for other cats. It worked for my rib. That's how I need to practice saying it. So
So we
sound.
talked about so many devices and like different things to track in terms of
Mhm.
fitness and
Mhm.
recovery. We're just getting some questions here, and
Yeah,
one of the
please.
questions was, what to track. If there are any metrics that you would recommend that everyone should be tracking, and some of these devices, which ones would you recommend for home use?
Yeah. So I want everyone to start with a star and have your star. Okay. And think holistically about your star. So physical fitness, sleep fitness, nutrition fitness, mental fitness, and communal fitness. And I want you to think about tracking things in all 5 areas. And you may find that you're really short up in one of these areas, and you can stop tracking after 2 weeks because you're like, oh, I know, and that's not my that's not my opportunity. Let's just say that's not my opportunity. The Aura Ring, I highly recommend because it gives you a very simple, if not perfect, because none of these trackers are perfect. We know without a doubt that it's these data points are not perfect, and they're really good. I highly recommend that everyone tracks their sleep. I highly recommend everyone tracks their HRV. HRV is heart rate variability. That's the best metric that we currently have access to give us a window into how well we're handling our stress. And when we talk about stress, the studies are crystal clear. Not managing our stress, AKA having the stress, our mental stress, our emotional, energetic stress, be more than we really can process and handle. Um, we know that that is worse than smoking cigarettes. So hopefully the people on this call are not smoking cigarettes. We've already, not decided not to do that. But most of us are like, well, I don't really know what to do about my stress because life is stressful. You look around what's going on, especially right now in life, and it's like, well, how do I handle stress? The thing is this, there's a million things that we can try to improve how we handle stress. Okay. And that's when we can talk about our mental fitness and our communal fitness as being in nature improves how well we handle stress. And when we say how well we handle stress, we're talking about, is our body in homeostasis? And that's the word, homeostasis. Are we in a place of ease or dis-ease? And so the HRV kind of gives us a window into how at ease or diseased we are. Now, the problem is most of us have not been tracking our HRV since we were children. I'm really curious personally. I wish I had a magic wand and could have my HRV since I was a child, because full disclosure, my HRV still kind of sucks. And I'm like, huh. And I keep having these really big breakthroughs around old trauma and integrations. And I'm like, is my HRV going to be better? And every now and then my HRV does get better. Like last week, I went and visited a property I'm looking at potentially buying to build a retreat, for Hacked on, and it's on a river and it's glorious. And that night, my HRV was through the roof, like 3 times higher than it usually is. Right. So I'm
Wow.
like, a clue. And that's the key. So we don't want to look at our HRV and then beat ourselves up. And that's originally what happened with me when I started tracking my HRV. I was using something called a Leaf monitor, which gives us a 24-hour monitoring system for our HRV, and it has built-in mindfulness. So it's a pretty cool tool. It's called Leaf, Lief. The problem was that I wore it while I slept, and during the day, I am really good because I have a pretty strong mindfulness practice. So I'm really good at, oh, I'm in a place of stress. I can get myself right back into the green. Like heart math is another way that we can track our HRV. But when I'm asleep, I'm a freaking sleep. What am I supposed to do if I'm stressed? And the freaking Leaf kept waking me up all night, telling me that I was stressed while I slept. And I was like,
get your HRV up, and you're like, I'm trying, I'm asleep.
Shit. Yeah. And honestly, at first I was like, oh shit. Again, uncomfortable truths, right? So when we use these trackers, we want to be really, really mindful to take the information, not make a big deal out of it, smile, soften, sink and slide. Like, okay, so it turns out I'm not as eased and fit as I thought I was. Okay. And that's honestly what's allowed me to be, able to speak to all this, is because I've actually had a pretty fucked up life, and I had a lot of trauma and get to recover from the trauma and all that fun stuff. But tracking HRV, really, really important, because we can then do tests. Oh, look at that. My HRV was really bad last night. And I spoke to that really toxic friend before I went to sleep. Those kind of, oh, my HRV was really good last night. Oh, look at that. I sat out by the river for an hour and a half. Oh, okay. And then you can make some tweaks in your lifestyle. So tracking HRV, that's great for the mental fitness and kind of the communal fitness to see how you're really doing. Nutritional fitness, just keep a diary. I'm not really into calorie counting. You want to have a rough idea of calories in, calories out, but a calorie isn't a calorie, right? We know for a fact that, eating almonds and avocado, really good fats, are higher in calories, but our body burns them in a different way than, high glycemic foods, right? So
or processed food, yeah.
Processed foods. You just want to know what you're eating. So track it. You could use something like a MyFitnessPal, as long as you don't get crazy about it. Whatever works for you, at least for 2 weeks, track, be honest what you're really putting in your body. Most of us have issues with food because it isn't about the food. The food is a representative of comfort for most of us, of trying to feel better. And so most of us have some issues around food, and we don't want to make a big deal out of that, right? We're going to smile, soften, sink and slide. We're not going to make a problem out of the fact that most of us have some unhealthy relationship with food. I still do. I just have gotten it very kind of managed, and I smile and laugh when I realize. And then when I do still, like, popcorn is kind of my unhealthy thing, because popcorn is not a nutritionally dense food. And, most grains these days have been exposed to so many, pesticides, and it's just not healthy. It's not good for our gut. It's just not what we want to be ingesting. And I still eat it sometimes, and I'm not going to beat myself up about it. Right. But track your food at least for 2 weeks. So, if you're tracking your HRV, that'll give you some look into, especially Aura. Aura lets you put tags in. And so Aura, there's a plus sign where you can enter in, oh, today was the day that I sat by the river, or today was the day that I had that big fight with my partner, or today was the day that I whatever. And so then you can start to see trends. And Aura does a really good job with that too, because we never just want to look at one data point. We want to look at trends and seasons, and really just start to make little shifts in our lifestyle to level up. And looking at the physical fitness, the mental fitness, the communal fitness, the nutritional fitness, and the sleep, and going around all 5 and leveling up on all 5. And then in terms of at-home tools, workout tools, there's still not a favorite at-home, data-driven, relatively inexpensive option. And so I've got everything at home right now because hacked closed. So I've got ARX in my freaking garage, right? You're not going to have an ARX in your house. I'm not keeping this in my house very long because it's the worst value proposition ever, because it's expensive. But tonal is a really good machine. It's still expensive. It's a few $1,000s, and then it's a monthly cost, but it does do a really good job quantifying your strength numbers and giving you a holistic fitness program. So you're going to do mobility, you're going to do flexibility, you're going to do endurance, you're going to do strength. So that is a really good tool. I recommend you look at that. There's a bunch of new similar competitors. I haven't used those, so I can't say. I'm anxiously awaiting a bunch of new fitness bands. Like X3 is one of my favorite at-home workout tools, but it's not quantified. So you kind of just got to go intuitively. So you're not going to get data from it. But there's a bunch of new resistance bands that do have load cells in them that will give you some data. So I'll report
that's
back.
cool.
I'll report back on that. I haven't used them yet. I'm waiting.
But I mean, you can also track, even if they don't have those quantifying tools into them, you can still track with something like a smart scale or keeping those diaries and logs.
So worst case, right? No excuses. You just keep track and like, okay, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you put together a plan. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm going to do a mobility exercise. Tuesday and Saturday, I'm going to do a high intensity, cardio, and maybe Sunday, I'm going to do a high strength, slow and heavy, and you just keep track, hold yourself accountable, and then keep track with your results. And yes, on the body assessment side, there are some great at-home fitness scales, like the Withings, I think is how you say it. There's a Fit Tracker one that they're not so expensive, and I have an Omron. It doesn't sync up to an app, so you don't see the trends on an app, but it does keep the trends on it. So there's a lot of good at-home body trackers as well. And then at-home recovery stuff. Hypervolt is not crazy expensive. That thing is a dream. The new Normatec isn't that expensive. That thing is a dream. So there are things that you can have, and then no excuses. I don't know anybody that shouldn't be taking cold showers. So every day I shower. Well, okay, it's been quarantine. I'm not exactly showering every day. I'll come clean, no pun intended. Every day that I shower, it's not like, okay, it's fine. Every day that I shower, you do the hot and the cold. There's just no excuses, because you're going to be increasing your capacity for discomfort. So your mental fitness, hot and cold shower. So keep track, have a buddy, hold each other accountable, do hot and cold contrast at home. There's no excuse to not do hot and cold showers at home.
And it gets easier over time too. So the first few days will be tough, but then, in no time, you're going to be turning that tap to cold and just getting in there.
And then notice how your capacity to handle discomfort, mental discomfort, physical discomfort, notice how that expands. If that's not a superpower, I don't know what is, right? For us to be able to expand our capacity to stay calm and cool and centered in kind of the heat of the storm, all this, puns intended, right? That's going to transfer into all areas of your life. So and then of course there's metabolic, benefits to the hot and cold contrast too, besides just the mental. We know that there's little micro muscles that are working, and it's blood flow and circulation, all that fun stuff. So no excuses. This is stuff that all of us can be doing at home.
So talking about micro muscles, we did get some question about muscle building. Great segue. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
We have some questions about how muscle building changes over time. And then if you could touch on muscle building and menopause, if there are ways to alter workouts during menopause and post-menopause as well.
Yeah. So, the research that we know, especially as women, right? And we already said how there's a dearth of research, because it seems as though the estrogen in our body is directly related to the muscle building, right? And we understand that as we reach menopause, the estrogen is declining, right? Like, we know there's been some pretty good evidence-based studies that show doing hormonal replacement therapy increases our capacity to build muscle during menopause and beyond. Now, all of this, we're circling back to kind of what was my original point was like, this is complicated, and it's like, it may be harder to build muscle with less estrogen. It's certainly possible. You're still going to be able to do it, right? And you may need to figure, and then it may come to a point where you're doing all of the things that you know are the best practices to build muscle, and your body's just not doing it, right? And so that's when you go get the Dutch test, and you're looking deeper into what's going on with my hormones, what's going on with my metabolism, what's going on that my body isn't building the expected muscle, that my body isn't adapting in the expected way based on the work. And that was the thing at Hacked, right? Like, people who I was coaching, we would obviously have the prescription of around the work. And so, like, I know what someone is doing empirically on the ARX, how much heavy lifting they're literally doing, how much time under tension that they have. And I know, what they're doing on the Carol. I don't know necessarily how accurate their food diaries are. I don't know for a fact how they're eating. I certainly don't know week over week what's going on with their hormones. I absolutely recommend everybody go and get a full workup, both the hormonal and the metabolic, everything, so we have as much of a picture as possible. But in a perfect world, we would know that every day. We would know every day. But I've yet to find, and believe me, I'm looking for the people. I'm like, wait, can you just hook something out? Like, we've all done, I think you and I and Josh, we've all done the continuous glucose monitors, because
oh, I'm wearing one right now.
Are you? Yeah, right, yeah. We want to know. Like, I would totally sell my soul. Be like, I want all of my data constantly. You can implant something, and I just want to know on my phone exactly what my blood sugar is, exactly what my hormonal levels are, exactly what my mineral levels are, my micronutrition, everything. And then how great will that be, right? Then we can be like, well, ooh, look at that. Like, how we could just see patterns and see causation in a way that we don't have access to that right now. And so what I say to everybody when you start working with me or on your own is start with the lowest hanging fruit and then see what results that you get, because there's expected adaptation. There's certain ranges of expected muscle building, right? So, for a typical, 20 something, I'm going to make numbers up here because I actually don't know these numbers. In a perfect world, I would know these numbers, right? And I don't, and that's fine. Let's say a 20-something-year-old woman would have an expected 3-pound muscle increase over, 4 weeks using this particular ARX protocol. And then maybe a 30-year-old woman would have an expected, 2.5-pound, muscle gain. And a 40-year-old woman would have an expected 2-pound, right, over those 4 weeks. And I'm making numbers up, right? So we have, and this is what I do. And it's not that I make numbers up when people come, but I'm like, all right, give me your whole history. All right, and a lot of it, because again, if someone was an athlete before, that will change our expected results, right? If you've never been an athlete, if your body never had muscle, it takes longer to build it.
Build that muscle memory, right? Train it to build muscle.
Yeah. And so when I assess people the first time, I use my intuition to be like, okay, because I want to set realistic expectations. I'm going to have a really lousy business if I don't give you some sort of reasonable expectations for, what do we expect in 6 weeks, based on if you eat this way and you behave this way, you work out this way, this is what we expect. And yes, the older we are, the harder it is to build muscle, the longer it takes, the harder it is to shift, our lean body mass, our fat mass percentage. And then there's tons of factors, lifestyle factors, history factors that are going to impact our expectations. And so the question the person had around how muscle building works is freaking complicated. We know it's like time under tension and the micro tears, and there's a lot of hypotheses around how it works. But the real honest to God answer is that no one knows. No one knows. And so that's one of the things that, like, some people would want to come in and argue with me about, the slow and steady training, which that's based on, Dr. McGough's work, his Body by Science book, and a lot of research that I had plenty of weightlifters and people that are kind of competitive, bodybuilders come in and argue and want to argue with me. And I'm like, you may be right. The best way is just test it. Test it on yourself, see what results you get. And yeah, as you get older, it is harder. And if you have less estrogen, it is harder. Does that mean that hormonal replacement therapy is going to be right for you? I don't know, because there's pros and cons of all of it. And you have to figure out your unique value proposition. And so the answer
Mhm.
always is it's complicated. I don't know. And lucky us, we have access to all of these awesome tools and we get to be scientists together. And I'm going to empower you to get the best results possible. And then we're going to be honest about what worked and what didn't. And I'm not going to make unrealistic promises. I can't promise you that this is going to work because I don't know everything about what's going on in your body. Even if we did an in-depth health assessment, and still don't, that's just one moment in time as opposed to the trend over the next 6 weeks, right? I mean, it's none of this is perfect, which is exciting because that means there's opportunities for advancement.
And I love that you talk about the 5 pillars as well,
Mm-hmm.
because your point, it's not just about the physical working out.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not getting enough sleep, your body may hold on to fat more and it will be harder to build muscle as a
Yeah,
result. So,
it's all
when I
connected.
hear, people missing that hour of sleep in the morning because they need to get into the gym before work, it's like, well, if you're undersleeping, it may actually be creating more damage potentially. So it's
Oh
all about
yeah,
that balance.
it's about
Or
balance.
if
Yeah.
your stress management, you may be working out all the time, but if your stress is through the roof, again, cortisol, body holding on to more fat, maybe you're burning more muscle when you're working out than fat. And so
Yeah,
yes,
and if
you're
we're
working
talking
out, but there's other
talking
things at
about
play.
physical fitness, right? If we're talking about physical fitness, our immune system is part of our physical fitness. We know how directly related our immune system functionality is to our mental fitness, right? Like our stress levels, cortisol, we know. And so we're lying to ourselves if we're just going to silo it off and just focus on one thing. And at the end of the day, what we all really want is to feel great and live this big, bold, beautiful life. And so that to me is about fitness. And we're lucky because we're living in an age where we have more data than ever, more tools, more enhancements than ever. And we get to test things out and figure out what's right for us, our own unique value proposition around all these options. We've got lots of options, lots of choices.
Exactly. So I
And
know
that's,
we're at time now, but
yeah. And this is like,
if
this
you're
is,
comfortable to keep going, we can finish off
yeah,
on
yeah.
that.
Any other questions? I mean, this is, easy for me and I'm happy to stay and answer questions. I understand if people got to go, I won't be offended. I'm chatty. I can't help it.
Thanks, Pam. No, that's great. If you're comfortable to
Mhm.
close off, let's do that.
Okay.
And I'll keep an eye out for any other questions.
Yeah.
One that's for women in menopause, is there another flow that affects us like the moon?
Oh, that's an excellent question. And I honestly don't know. And I'm sure the answer is yes. Like I don't, that is not something I'm an expert in. And my intuitive answer is yes, absolutely. And I'm premenopausal still. Um, and so I will, I think, be able to answer that better later in life. And I'm sure that there's some really wise, awesome women that could speak to it right now. And I don't know. And I'm sure the answer is yes.
And another question that we have here is talking about, oh, Dasha, let's talk about blood flow restriction and
I
women.
know. And it's, Josh, and I know. And the thing about blood flow restrictions, like I went down this rabbit hole really early on in Hacked, because again, like the whole core promise of Hacked is this effective minimum dose, right? And the research on blood flow restriction is really, really strong, really, really compelling. Where I ended up on it, again, yes, with women, same thing with fasting and keto diets. I mean, there's no doubt that it affects women differently. And the end of the day, the answer honestly is I don't know. I don't know enough to really tell you one way or the other. I am certain it's fine and you'll do it and you'll experience it and find the right balance for you. Where I ended up on it was the pain of it, like having to deal with it and make sure it was safe, make sure it was the right amount of tension, not too much, too little. It was like, again, the value proposition on it for me didn't make it worth it, because I'm getting good enough results without going through all of that. That said, if someone's like curious and instead of, maybe they don't have access to the ARX, they don't have access to some of these other tools, I think it's an awesome tool to play with because I know for a fact it's effective. And I do think it's safe for women. I do think it's different for women. And it's also the other thing that's really important that everyone understands, it's low intensity. you do blood flow restriction workouts only on low intensity, lower weight workouts. You would not use it on a high intensity workout. But yeah, I mean, I can't speak to the real research. I mean, I know it's safe. It's certainly been tested on women. And there's not good enough research to really tie it in. Chances are using it during the follicular phase is going to be when you'll get the most advantage to it in the same way, like whatever that underlying biochemical circuitry is, you're going to get better results doing it during that first part of your cycle as opposed to the second part. But beyond that, the answer honestly is I don't know. And I haven't played with it myself. I did a lot of research on it early on because I was thinking about offering it at Hacked. And it was a complicated one. And I was like, you know what? I don't need to go there because I have these other tools. And it's a little bit more complicated, a little bit more risk of you're cutting off people's blood flow, and heaven forbid someone's got some deep vein thrombosis going on, and it's just like I don't really want to claim my whole thing. I think you all know is like I don't want to ever claim to be an expert in something that I'm not, and I'm a huge fan of the do no harm principle. So I'm certain it's safe, to test and do. It's just not something that I really went down the rabbit hole personally with, because I just didn't feel like the value proposition was there for me personally.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. Well, I want to be cognizant of time and respectful of your time. So maybe one more question and then we'll close off. We got a question about recovery. So how would you test whether you're recovered enough to push further? So if someone hurt their knee running, what are the baby steps to securely say that they're ready for a larger workout?
I love that question so much. Okay, so here's
good
whenever
one.
Great question. I don't know who that was. Gold star. Okay, so here's the progression. Stability first, and there's ways to assess stability, and you can Google this, and because if it was a knee or post having a baby, like your abs, getting your abs back after having a baby, if you skip a step, you're going to increase diastasis. So any women that either are post baby and didn't know this, because that was me. I trained with someone who was supposedly postnatal certified, and they didn't work me through the proper progression to make sure I was rebuilt enough to graduate to that next level, right? And same thing, if it's a knee, if it's the shoulder. So whatever joint it is, you just look for a stabilizing progression, and it's stability first, and then mobility, right? And staying stable as you move. So on the ARX, we have people do a static hold. So you do a static hold with very little tension and then increase, and it's just static. And so it's totally steady and stable, and you can really safely rebuild using an isometric progression like that. And if you don't have access to that, there's a stability progression through movement as well, but stability first, and then you increase strength through that same stabilizing progression. Okay. And power is last. So it's stability, strength, and then power. And so you don't want to skip a step and not shore up the stability, go to strength, and then you're risking re-injury. Or all of us, none of us are perfect. And so all of us, no matter how advanced we are as athletes, go back to the basics, like at least every couple months. Go back, make sure you're doing just really stabilizing, really focused mobility programs with assessments. If you're just doing mobility programs without assessing, if you're actually staying stable, then you're not actually getting the benefit of it necessarily. You may be rewiring in a faulty movement pattern, which down the road is going to lead to injury.
Yeah, and I love that we're ending off on recovery because it's so important for that holistic approach to fitness.
Life. If we're injured, we can't just go play with our friends. We want to play with our friends.
Exactly. Yeah, and right now is the good weather to enjoy it. We want to do that. Yeah. So, Pam, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story and your approach to health and fitness and all the amazing, cool innovations that we have available to us now. I think we're living in such an exciting time where we have these tools to measure and quantify our health and really track our performance and optimize as we go. So thank you so much for your time. And thank you to everyone who asked questions as well. Hope we answered everything. And watch out for our next webinar next week with Sarah Turner on June 7th. We'll be talking about photo biomodulation, so light healing. It's quite the mouthful. And again, thank you for joining us. Check out Hacked Fitness if you're ever in New York, and follow Pam Gold's Instagram account. And we'll see you next time. Enjoy this beautiful weekend, everyone. Bye.
Lots of love. Bye. Thanks, everyone.